Hello everybody, Slay here. I had one of my viewers comment on Reddit earlier and asked me what tier 10 is worth grinding and what they should go for. As you see here in my hangar, I have 7 tier 10s and I have one unlocked, which is the Yak 30 that I am currently grinding credits slowly but surely. I've been trying to equip all my aircraft first. Um, I'm also working my way down to this MiG-15 BIS. So I guess there is no real good answer to this, depending on what tier 10 you want to go down, because it depends on what you play. If you're a fighter, then from what I've heard and what I've experienced, the F-86 and the Yak 30 are your two best turn fighters, but that doesn't really define what a fighter should be, right? I mean, at tier 10, speed is just as good as turning. Firepower definitely comes into play. So I'm going to go ahead and just take a quick moment to break down some of the planes that I've flown, some of the planes that my friends have flown, and what I've heard about tier 10s. So first off, let's just keep it simple. So I'm going to go right into fighters. As you see here, my two fighters that I have unlocked is the F-86 and the LA-15. I have the Yak 30 unlocked again, but again, I do not have the credits to purchase it just yet, but I have seen it flown and I've heard great things. So I did a video about the F-86. This plane, it has 620s. The firepower is definitely lacking on this plane, but that doesn't really matter because of your airspeed. You can boost up to 1,000 top speed. You have an altitude performance of 2,800. So really, this is better known as that annoying mosquito that you just can't shake. This thing will get on your tail, and it's got an average turn time of 9 seconds. You're just not going to outturn this thing. If you look here, the LA-15 has the same turn time, but 800 less meters optimum altitude. It has the same best speed, and I don't believe I can get into the Yak 30. Okay, I can. So the Yak 30 has 1,500 altitude, and it has less speed. It has only 900 kilometers an hour top speed at its best altitude. So it really depends on where you want to sit. The LA-15 is more of your mid-range fighter. Decent speed, decent firepower with 323s. The Yak 30 uses the same 323s that the LA-15 does, which are good 23s. Trust me, those things hit like a truck. But man, look at that maneuverability. It's got an 8-second turn. For average time to turn 360 is only 8 seconds, so it's got 86 maneuverability, whereas your LA-15 is sitting at 74 maneuverability, and your F-86 is just sitting slightly above that at 77. So again, it all depends on what you want to do. If you're a turn fighter and you don't care about altitude, then the Yak 30, you can't go wrong with it. If you wanted to be a mid-range pilot in a fighter, then your LA-15 will definitely do the job. But if you want your good all-around versatile fighter, in my opinion, I like to have a plane that can do it all, so that I'm never left, hoping that, oh crap, I don't want my, the fight to be 1,000 meters above my cap because I can't get up there. So rather than having all that limitations, I'd rather just play the average bear, in my opinion. And the F-86 is usually my go-to plane for fighters. So if I had to recommend anything for tier 10 fighters, I'm going to have to stick with my guns on the F-86 Alpha, because this thing is just, man, it is such a beast when it comes to getting behind a plane, staying on their tail. Again, your firepower is not the greatest, but those 620s are, so they will just make your enemies submit to your will, I'm telling you. If something's booming, zooming past you, then you're going to just spray. You're going to just pepper them with some, the 650s. They're going to leave you, but they're going to have to come back at some point. You'll be there, they'll leave you, you'll turn and start killing other things, they'll come back, and then you can finish the job when they're closer. So, I mean, it's not a bad plane by any means. You're not going to catch like an XF90 or a 262 HG. You're not going to really catch those. But for everything else, you have no problem with this plane. It is a absolute beast of a plane. So if you ask my recommendation for fighters, again, F-86. To me, it's the most well-rounded fighter that we have in this game. The other ones are great at what they do, but they're very limited at what they do. So next, let's talk about multi-roles real quick. This one's kind of a salty subject for me, only because this beast right here, this BVP 21502, this was the first tier 10 that I grinded and unlocked. And man, going from the tier 9, which is the BVP 212, to that thing, let's just take a quick look at maneuverability. You got 64 maneuverability and 10 seconds average to turn. You got 2,000 optimum altitude, but look at that rate of climb. The rate of climb is kind of garbage on this thing. But let's just go to the tier 10. So remember, 64 maneuverability. The tier 10, you're sitting at 39 maneuverability and 14 seconds to turn around. Just look at the size difference on this plane going from the tier 9. So pull up the tier 9 here. It's kind of small, right? It's not the biggest of airplanes. You go to the tier 10. What the heck just happened? It is definitely takes it's a departure from the whole line to me. The BVP line is great up until the tier 10. This is my most regretted plane I've ever purchased. I have a horrible win rate at it. You're like, okay, cool. You know, it has 60 rockets on this thing. It's got 56 plus 4, 60. These 4 WGR 210s are kind of like air-to-ground rockets. They do 2,000. Then you have 56 Rams, or R4Ms, sorry, that shoot in clusters. You'll see here, this is the clusters they shoot in, so they shoot 7 at a time. Which is fine. If you need rocket kills and you are going to go and attack ground pounders and bombers, this plane has no problems. You can do that all day. But if anybody gets on your tail, and I mean anybody, you are not going to be able to turn away from them. You don't have the speed. Remember that F-86 with 1,000 top speed? This thing only has 960, so it's slower than a fighter, and it turns horrible compared to a fighter, and it has less altitude than the F-86. I mean, all around, just the flight characteristics of this plane are garbage. I would not recommend going down this role or this line unless you're just going to grind it to tier 9. The tier 9, which I'll do in another video, is a beautiful plane. I love that plane. It is awesome. It's got a small profile, whereas this thing is just a giant target, in my opinion. It comes equipped with a turret, which is unique to a multi-role at this tier. But as you see, the turret is only 250s. And yeah, it's 96 DPS, but man, they just do nothing. The damage that others are causing to you will just shred you before you could even blink. So with that said, we'll talk about this other multi-role I unlocked. So I went down the J7 W3 line, started with the A7M, starts with a fighter line. So if you're trying to get into a traditional multi-role, you might want to stick with the Corsair line and go down to the F7U. The way this line plays off is you get to the A7M and the Japanese line, and it takes you over to the J7W1, and then you get J7W1 at tier 8, W2 at tier 9, and W3 at tier 10. Once you get the tier 9 of this plane, I mean, it just becomes a powerhouse. It's got 2 bombs on it, and it's got 430s. These 430s in the front, look at that gun armament rating, 73. The damage is insane on these guns. It's a 300 DPS, 20 rate of fire, so it's not the quickest rate of fire. But man, when you hit things with these 30s, they literally just disappear. I love this plane. It's got a really decent rate of turning, 10 seconds to turn 360. That's amazing. The only lackluster part about this plane is it's slow. It's only got an 880 top speed, and it's a low ceiling for its altitude. But you're a multi-role, so if you're a multi-role, you should, you know, this is the plane you're going to go in, you're going to cap things with. You're going to drop bombs whenever you can. The bombs actually respawn fairly decently, and you're just going to kill people around caps and not really worry about the engagements way up high. If you're on a map with 5 caps and you have to fly around you know, over giant oceans or whatever, this is not going to be the funnest plane to play. But if you're at a good map that's everything's pretty close together, I can't recommend it enough. The J7W3 line is definitely worth getting. Now, as for the American multi-role, though, I have heard it is the most well-rounded and best um, multi-role at tier 10 in the game. If you look, it's not maneuverable at all, but it's super fast. It's got a better ceiling, and its guns are the 420s, which are very reliable, and it's got 4 500-pound bombs, so it carries more bombs. It's got a little bit more reliable guns, but I've heard just for all in all, this thing's a good plane to grind out. I'm currently down to the F94. Man, that Vulcan, I wish the F7U had 2 of these Vulcans, because at 800 DPS and 3,000 rounds a minute, 2 of them would be sick. Even if they just took this Vulcan and put it on this F7U, I would have been a lot more inclined to grind it out, but it goes back to using the 420s, which are not bad guns by any means, but that Vulcan is just a pinnacle of multi-role, and this thing gets 24 rockets that are air-to-air rockets that just do work. I love the F94D. Again, that's a departure from this video. I'm here to talk about tier 10s and what you should go down. So from my experience, if you're going to go down anything, definitely go down the J7W3 line. I can tell you from experience, this plane is just a beast. And once you get to tier 9, well, realistically, once you get to tier 8 and you unlock the 30s at tier 8 in this line, then the line just really starts coming into its own. The J7W1 kind of sucks, but once you go all the way down here and you unlock those second 30s, I mean, if you look at the difference, it's not much difference DPS-wise. You got 200 and then 220, but it's just a better rate of fire and slightly more damage on those last 30s. So once you get that first set of 30s and those bombs and maybe the top motor, that thing really starts coming into its own. But if you look at the J7W2 fully upgraded, it's got the same gun armament as the J7W3. It's 73. Those guns are just, they're not fair. They really aren't fair to what you're hitting. You can literally shred a defender in about 2 hits with this thing. So moving on, that was your multi-rolls. Let's go ahead and go to heavy fighters. Now you'll see here, I'm limited in my experience with heavy fighters. I went down this line because I was chasing after the Pancake, which is the XF5U at tier 8. Man, beautiful plane. I'll do a video on that in the future. But that leads you to the XF90. As for heavy fighters, you got this plane. And looks like you're going to be competing with Germany with its ME262 HG3, which I've heard good things about. It's got 82 gun armament, very good top speed, super fast. It's a good plane in comparison, but again, I've heard bad things about the line going up to it. I've heard good things about the UK Javelin, but again, pretty much I've heard nothing but bad things about like the Hornet and the 1056. The 228 I heard is good, but the Javelin I heard is really great as well. So sorry for my lack of experience with heavy fighters, but I can tell you about this plane here. This is the XF90. It is a Lockheed Martin aircraft. They did something right here, man. Like these motors, just so fast. Look at this top speed, 1110. You have just so much speed to get to wherever you're trying to go. But look at what you're trading off. You have no, and I mean no, maneuverability in this plane. 27 maneuverability. It takes you 70 seconds to turn around. And man, if you got to turn around, you're dead. So the only way to fly this plane is to boost in. I would save at least 75% of your boost, get to your target, and then spray them down with your 620s. Yes, I said 620s. This thing has the Pancakes guns, but they're improved, and it has 6 of them. I mean, that massive amount of firepower, that is just shredding your targets wherever you're hitting. Like the S7U, it carries 2 of the same 500-pound bombs. They are definitely enough to come in, drop your bombs, do a lot of damage, and then proceed and taking out ground attackers. I can tell you right now, parking behind a bomber group is just embarrassing for the bombers. You will shred an entire bomber group in less than 20, less amount of time that it takes you to turn around. I'll tell you that much. It is an awesome, awesome, beautiful aircraft, and I can't recommend it enough. It takes a little bit getting used to because you are just so fast. I've rammed so many people in this thing unintentionally. I swear, pinky swear. Uh, I've definitely rammed so many planes because you're just so fast. You're gonna push right in. You're gonna get to your target, and if they even look at you, there's usually not enough time for you to maneuver out of the way before you're just going to go right through them. You know, it's a good plane. I can't recommend it enough. If you ever have a chance to grind it out and you want my recommendation on a heavy, right now, best thing I could recommend is this XF90. All right, moving on from heavies, got the attack aircraft. And man, this is my bread and butter right here. This was my first ground attacker that I unlocked, the IL-40P. I love this plane, but I also love the German ground attacker for everything that it's worth. So with that said, I'll explain myself. So the IL-40P sits with 423s, which are weaker than the Germans, and it's got one 23mm turret in the back, which is not the greatest, but it's enough to shred things behind you. Carries 8 rockets and 2 bombs. It is so much firepower that you can dump your ordnance and take a garrison if you know what buildings to hit in the first 10 seconds you're there. And those guns are definitely enough. They sit here at the bottom. They're definitely enough to loiter behind a target and just shred them. This thing excels at killing other ground attackers. So if you want something that is not quick at all, top speed at best altitude is 660. The German one is 770, so the German one's faster. But look at this. Look at this survivability. 105 survivability rating. With all my equipment on, protection expert, and everything, you're looking at 32, 37 hit points. That is just embarrassing. That's almost double the hit points of the German heavy. But what, again, like I said in my videos with the German heavy, German attacker, what it lacks in hit points it makes up for in firepower and speed. So it really depends on your playstyle. This tree is not a bad tree at all. The USR attack tree starts at the TSH, meh. But once you get to the IL-2, things really start coming into play. Now, if you'll see here, I have not played the IL-2 or the IL-8. That's because my first line after the BVP, I was trying to grind down to this MiG-15, and I went down to the I-220, and I moved over to the IL-10. Another beautiful aircraft. It is definitely one of my favorite Tier 7s out there, and for a ground attacker, it's awesome. It's got amazing maneuverability. I will get into that in another video, but then it moves to the IL-20. You could skip right past the IL-8, and pretty much this whole line if you wanted to do that. And man, that IL-20, it's got 257s on it. It's a joke. Like it's a flying school bus, but it is a school bus of doom. I love this thing. And once you get to the IL-40, it's got 6 23s on it, and like the only 500 less hit points than the IL-40P. So great plane, same armament-ish. And then once you get down to the 40P, again, I can't recommend the 40P enough. So if you're looking for a Tier 10 to grind out, definitely you can't go wrong with the IL-40P and the Russian attacker line. Now that I've talked about the Russian attacker, let's bring out my latest and greatest beauty. So now the MEP 1102B. This thing, I'll tell you, it's quickly growing on me. I probably have like a 95% win rate in it. It's disgusting. It is awesome. It's got 220s on the sides, and it's just super, super fast. It only carries 4 bombs underneath. Let's go to the upgrades. Only carries 4 250s, and it carries 4 30s. Now these 30s, unlike any of the other line, look at that rate of fire, 330 rounds a minute. They almost fire like a machine gun. Like, it is insane how quick you can fire these guns. And that is why I would almost recommend running like a weapons cooling if you're going to fly this thing. You're going to overheat quite a bit, but man, what you do to other ground attackers or anybody trying to go head on with you is really just an embarrassment. So between the two, I would tell you to go down both. If you're going to ask me what ground attacker line to go down, You can't go wrong with either. The IL-40P is beautiful. The MEP 1102B is beautiful. Uh, Definitely can't recommend either enough. They have been just the most fun planes to play for me. So that was all my tier 10s I have. I hope this video was able to give some people out there some answers on what lines you might want to go down. Just because I only have 7 planes doesn't mean I'm nowhere near, complete with this game. Um, I've heard good things about most planes out there. Definitely have heard good things about the F7U, and that's going to be one of the lines, one of the planes I get next. As for UK, I haven't heard anything bad about the Swift or the Javelin. So, I mean, I'm going to be going down these other lines. The KI-162 line, I heard, is actually a good maneuverability fighter line to go down. It's got 230s, so it's kind of a departure from the KI-84 and everything before that. But I heard it's not a bad plane to go down. So if you're going to ask me what tier 10 to choose, I think I'm better off telling you what tier 10 to avoid. And the only one I could really recommend avoiding from experience is avoid this BVP 215-02. Like I said, if you're going to go down to the tier 9, the BVP 212, by all means, stick with it. It's an awesome, awesome plane. But if you're wondering, hey, I've ground out so much experience on this BVP 212, should I go ahead and crank out the 6 million credits to get that 215? I'm just going to have to tell you no. This is the one plane I could recommend against. It has been a nightmare to fly. So again, hope that helped. If anybody was looking for what tier 10 to grind. And thanks again for watching. Hope this video was helpful to you, and if you liked it, please give it a thumbs up. Thank you.